There is a lot to celebrate in that career. We're joined now by Mark Searby, who's author of the book Rik Mayall Comedy Genius. Morning to you, Mark. Just watching those clips, and there'll be a younger generation who are constantly finding Rik Mayall, won't there? There was something so special about that time and place and his kind of comedy.
Oh, absolutely, Charlie. That's the thing. There was, you're talking about new generations finding Rik. That's the beauty of his work, is that it has spanned generations. You think it started with the young ones. That's one generation. Then you go to the next generation, which is my generation, which talked about bottom. Then you go beyond that and you talk about another generation finding him with Man Down. And then even after his sad passing, 10 years now, unfortunately, more and more people are finding him. His name trends on social media all the time. That's rare. That's rare for any comedian who's alive, never mind about dead. So it's beautiful that people still find Rik's stuff funny.
Yeah, there's this sort of furious, wonderful slapstick element to all of that stuff he did, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Let's face it, look, I don't condone it, but being hit in the face by a frying pan is certainly harking back to Rik's work. And that it was just funny. It was over the top. It was slapstick. Him and Adrian Edmondson were masters at it. They loved Laurel and Hardy. They loved Tom and Jerry. And this was their real life version of it.
It was actually morning. It's Naga here, Mark. It was also really interesting because they could have just been silly, but they took on politics as well, didn't they? They took on kind of social issues and added their commentary, which really resonated with so many people.
Absolutely, you're right there, Naga. I mean, you look at in Bottom, they talk about being at the bottom of the barrel, having no money, and just the government taking all of their cash, and they're left with £40 for an entire month. So it's all about the politics there. Then you think about Rik's work in The New Statesman. That was a satire. It's not anymore, unfortunately. It's very much the real world. And there's a clip that always goes around on social media where it's Rik as Alan Bastard, where he's saying about, in the old days, you were poor, you got sick, you died. That continues to trend. So Rik has always been political in his work. He wasn't in his real life. He was very quiet about that. But his work always had that current of politics in there.
What do you think in terms of marking, commemorating, celebrating his life in Droitwich? What are you envisaging?
Well, I would love it to be like an entire weekend celebrating Rik's work, but also the influences as well. Rik's influences continue now. You look at a lot of stand-up comedians and also sitcoms that are on TV, and they're all influenced by Rik's work. So it would be nice for comedians to turn up, whether they're famous or not, whether they're starting out or whether they're at the end of their career. And it'd be wonderful for them to just come talk about Rik's legacy in there, but also do their own performances as well. Rik, he did stand up. He did a couple of tours of stand-up, but he wasn't known for stand-up. He was known for sitcoms. He was known for, obviously, that anarchic behavior. But it would be nice to see how far his legacy spans. And I think with a comedy festival, certainly in Droitwich, which, that was their family base, I think it's the perfect place. And so many people can get there. It's in the centre of the UK. I think it would be a marvellous idea. I really hope it's pulled off as well. And I just, Rik's influence continues to this day. And this is just one of those legacies that I hope does go ahead.
Do you know what? I am old enough, Mark, to remember. Now I say I remember. I was reminded in that clip of that first character who did was the investigative reporter. And I remind me of the name, because I do remember that.
Turvey.
Say it again.
Kevin Turvey.
Kevin Turvey. And it was a little bit of comedy genius in its own way. And that was the first time I ever saw him. And you kind of knew there was something a bit special going on, but it was very different from what happened later on.
Oh, absolutely. But that was the brilliance of Rik, is that Rik didn't know what to do for that audition. He was on the train and he had no idea what to do for the character. So he did it on the spot. It was improvised and suddenly it took off. And obviously it got you, Charlie. You were hooked on it. And then years later, he was changing it up. He was playing, you know, Richard, or he was playing Filthy Rich and Catflap, or, you know, he was in Drop Dead Fred. So he was able to switch up loads of things. He did serious stuff as well. I think people forget that. The Rik Mayall Presents show, that was a very serious piece of work that he did. He did audio books as well. I mean, he narrated an audiobook for Evelyn Waugh. I mean, it's amazing, his career. He really was a master at just about everything, I think.
Do you think he'd have liked a statue of himself? Do you think he was
That's
that
a good
kind
question,
of person?
Mega. He would have loved a statue that's probably about 10 foot tall and about 10 foot in girth in the nether regions, because that was him. But in terms of a standard statue, I don't think so. No, I think he would have liked to have seen comedy continue in his name and whatever that influence would be. So I think this comedy festival is probably one of the best ways of honouring the man himself.
Mark Zerby, author of Rik Mayall Comedy Genius, perfectly titled book, may I say. Thank you so much for joining us here on Breakfast. Take care.